to room 114 or whatever room we're in. 114, how about that? I'm correct on that. I'm Representative Denise Driehaus. I represent the west side of Cincinnati, Ohio. I am joined by Representative Nickie Antonio from Cuyahoga County. We've got some other speakers with us today. We're going to call them up after we talk about these two pieces of legislation. Cheryl John Cox from the Buckeye Forest Council is here, and Tish O'Dell from Broadview Heights is here. And she has a more of a personal take on this issue. But again, we're going to kick it off by describing the legislation that we have already dropped, that Representative Antonio is intending to drop her piece. I'll let her speak to that. So due to the potential environmental hazards and dangers to the surrounding land and drinking water, it is vital that we establish a moratorium on horizontal fracking of oil and gas wells while the United States Environmental Protection Agency completes a study on the relationship of hydraulic fracturing to drinking water resources. Representative Hurd, and I should have mentioned Representative Hurd and Representative Feder are ill today, so we told them not to come. So none of us will be getting sick, thank goodness. So Representative Hurd and I introduced a bill this morning to establish a moratorium on fracking in Ohio until the EPA study is released. Once the report from the study has been published, we will have a better understanding of how this procedure of fracking affects our drinking water. There are too many questions that still need to be answered regarding our constituents' safety. In its 2010 budget report, the U.S. House of Representatives Appropriation Conference Committee identified the need for a focused study on this topic. EPA scientists under this administration and at the direction of Congress are undertaking a study of this type of drilling to better understand any potential impacts of fracking on drinking water and groundwater. The EPA consulted with experts in the field through peer review and technical workshops, and engage stakeholders in a dialogue about the study through facilitated public meetings. The overall purpose of the study is to understand the relationship between hydraulic fracturing and drinking water resources. The scope of the proposed research includes the full lifespan of water in the process of hydraulic fracturing, from acquisition of the water through the mixing of chemicals and actual fracturing to the post-fracturing stage, including the management of flowback water, flowback and produced water, and its ultimate treatment and disposal. And we're talking about the retention bases that house the water once it's been used in the process. Initial research results are expected by the end of 2012, with the goal of the final report in 2014. Furthermore, our bill will allow Ohio to take the time to make appropriate and responsible decisions in order to protect our drinking water resources, while also increasing the transparency of the fracking procedures and operation. Many other states have not taken the necessary time to consider all the factors regarding horizontal fracking of oil and gas wells and have faced many difficulties protecting their land, water, and their citizens. We need to make sure our state learns from the situation in other states and considers the findings of the EPA study. In 1974, the Safe Drinking Water Act was passed by Congress to ensure clean drinking water is free from both natural and man-made contaminants. However, in 2005, the Bush-Cheney Energy Bill exempted natural gas drilling from the Safe Drinking Water Act. It exempts companies from disclosing the chemicals used during hydraulic fracturing. This becomes problematic when water treatment companies do not even know what they are testing for, but then release contaminated water into the rivers and streams. The New York Times has printed an ongoing series of stories exposing the many dangers of fracking. We've learned that Pennsylvania, one of the country's largest suppliers of natural gas, recently began testing its water when radioactivity levels were found to be too high last year. It was discovered that radioactivity levels had not been tested since 2006. The problem stemmed from gas industry wastewater with high levels of radioactivity being sent to sewage treatment plants that were not designed to remove radioactive materials. These plants then discharge the processed wastewater into rivers. On November 6, 2011, the New York Times reported that the governor of Pennsylvania ordered a moratorium on new drilling permits in state forest, to give you an idea of what's happening in some of the other states. We are seeing the effects of our neighbors' drilling. In West Virginia, a plant in Wheeling has been discharging gas drilling wastewater into the Ohio River. I come from Cincinnati. I think I mentioned that earlier, so that is a great concern for us in the southern part of the state. The risk posed by fracking extends across the country. In 2009, there were more than 493,000 active natural gas wells in the United States. There is no denying that Ohio is the industry's next target, but we cannot sit idly by while our state is contaminated and Ohioans are put at risk. Thank you again for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Representative Nickie Antonio.
Good afternoon. A companion to the legislation that Representative Driehaus has just talked about, the moratorium, is legislation that I intend to introduce in the next few weeks to call for some detailed information to be given to us about the components of that cocktail, if you will, that gets used when the chemicals are all put together into the water for the fracking process. So, along with my joint sponsor, Teresa Fetter, we will soon introduce the Transparency and Accountability in Hydrofracturing Bill. I think it's appropriate that we're having this discussion on the week that is considered Earth Science Week. Did everybody know that? We're celebrating Earth Science Week this week. And it runs through the week. The theme is Our Ever-Changing Earth. The celebration provides an opportunity for young people and the public to learn how geologic processes affect the Earth. And we're here today to talk about a geologic process. And we don't know how it's going to affect the Earth and our precious drinking water. And that's why it's so important for us to find out. Both of these bills are about need to know. Transparency and accountability. The legislation, the proposed legislation, will recognize that increased hydraulic fracturing is occurring right now, often referred to as fracking, for gas and oil in the rich shale deposits throughout Ohio. With concern for forces that may indeed reshape our state's landscape and affect one of our most precious resources, that of fresh, safe drinking water for all Ohioans, this bill has three major key components. Our bill requires the owner of a well to submit a complete listing of all the chemicals and other substances that will be used to stimulate the well, and also to identify the source and amount of fresh water to be used. Currently, drillers are not required to reveal the chemicals while the fracturing is occurring. This means that the public, along with the agencies that regulate public health, are unarmed to handle serious health risks. We're not even quite sure what those health risks could be, and to deal on the other side with issues that may occur. Second, an owner of a well will be required to submit to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and County Health Department documentation identifying where and how the owner will dispose, handle, recycle, or remediate all of the processed water and solids as a result of the hydrofracking. And third, there will be a 7% overriding royalty for the Clean Water Restoration and Testing Fund. The fund will be used for testing and remediating and repairing any water well or groundwater polluted in hydrofracking used in oil or natural gas welling, the drilling of the natural gas wells. According to the Ohio Environmental Council, hydrofracturing requires 4 to 7 million gallons of water for each frac. A single well could be fracked multiple times. Our bill and the establishment of requirements to document the source and amount of fresh water to be used is critical. The water is usually taken from local bodies of water and are greatly compromised when such large amounts are being drawn. It's another area that we're not quite sure what the long-term effects will be of taking all of that water out of its natural source. This bill will responsibly allow families to invest in their land, in drilling, without gambling away, hopefully, their health, property value, and their own personal safety. President McDavis of Ohio University recently wrote a letter to the U.S. Bureau of Land Management saying OU does not support the sale of leases in Wayne National Forest because it could result in unsafe conditions for OU students and employees. Ohio University is accountable for the health and safety of its students, employees, and the communities we serve, the letter states. To date, there is insufficient research on the effects the proposed activities from the sale of oil and gas leases would have on our community and our campus. we need to ask ourselves, how can Ohio's economy benefit if it is polluted by an industrial wasteland?